as a new immigrant, when I started in the business of real estate, I didn't have that many friends and family to begin with. So as a salesperson, I used to go door-knock. Yeah, so started in 2010, fast forward 13 years, I own a $25 million portfolio with 17 houses. Over leveraging is a very bad disease in our economy.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of it is coming from the social pressures on social media of people wanting to become successful very quickly. Like, I don't have enough money and the down payment is not there is not a good enough excuse to not go and invest in real estate, right? I bought 4 properties in 2020 in the midst of COVID. It took me 10 years to create a portfolio that gives me positive cash flow. It's wrong because a lot of people who are buying pre-construction are misguided to think that I don't have to get a mortgage, so let's go buy pre-construction and put the problem on the shelf for 4 years. As a landlord, I think landlording is not for everybody. Today, you see people get their licenses, the next day they're on social media and they're calling themselves the expert.
All right, Sahil, I'm so excited for this. Thanks. We just connected on social media and now we are sitting here. It's amazing. I just want to understand your journey a little. When did you come to Canada? How did you get into real estate? Just give us a rundown of.
Yeah, of course. And thanks for inviting me to your podcast as well. I'm excited for this as well. Nice to meet you. So basically, I came to Canada in 2003 as a first immigrant, as a student. As many students today come into the country with that open dream, I was the same. So I came here, did 1 year of high school. And then went straight to university. I took business and economics and Laureate. At the time, the goal was to get into investment banking because back early 2000s, that used to be the cool thing to do, right? So I did my my education and then I went straight to New York and I was working in investment banking for about 1.5 years.
Okay.
Shortly, 1.5 years, again, when you come from India and come here, you barely took 4 or 5 years to get settled here. You again had to make new friends. Again had to get accustomed to that life. But to do that again in New York, it didn't really resonate with me. And also the hopes and dreams that I had for finance didn't resonate with me as well. I realized that was not my calling. So I came back to Toronto, moved back to Toronto. I think it was late 2000s, about 2008. And at the time there was 2 rules. I don't want to wear a suit and I don't want to go back to a desk job.
Okay.
So
and you become a realtor?
Yes. No, actually, I didn't even become a realtor. I actually got a job with Nestle.
Okay.
In corporate sales.
Okay.
So I wanted to do something a little bit more sales, a little bit more like, on the road. And, I was always been good with sales. My passion has always been with interacting with people. I just didn't want to sit behind a desk.
When did you know that?
A year and a half of doing finance in New York on Wall Street, which is technically a dream job for anybody coming out of university. And I was so gung-ho about doing that job, but when I actually was doing it, it just didn't resonate.
When did you know that you're good with sales? Because people take years. It took me 9 years to realize that I'm good with
sales. I always, for example, always really, I've been an extrovert all my life, so I really enjoyed interacting with people. I always enjoyed the idea of getting into business discussions with people, negotiations with people. I worked my way up from working as selling cold calling, for example, for Laureate. I was raising money as an alumni for them. So I was doing a lot of money work there. I was selling. I worked at malls, while I was in university. So I dived into sales at many different times, and it's that waking up every day and going and doing something, and your 100% of your success depends upon what you do, right? Versus that gives me a little bit more excitement versus just paycheck to paycheck. So I realized that when I went back to banking, how much I missed meeting new people, interacting with people, and how even if your results are smaller, how your direct hard work or direct work into something can be translated into success, right? So that's kind of how I realized that, sales is something that I enjoy more, and I want to again, meet new people, close new deals, negotiate more, be a little bit more hands-on with the results that I get in life, right? So while I was doing Nestle, I started looking at a property for myself. And while I was searching for a property for myself, I got so deep into it, the research process of finding a property for myself, that I realized, that's again something that I was super passionate about. So I bought my first property in 2010. But market was obviously, so back in the day, 13 years ago now, and I bought a really small house in Yonge and Finch, but it was on a very big piece of lot. and I moved into the basement and I rented out the main portion. And I realized that from a mortgage perspective was a very good way of like house hacking, which they call it now. When I did that, the business model really resonated with me, and my brain sort of didn't stop learning more and more about real estate. So fast forward, I would say 6 years from 2010, I at this point had about 6-7 properties in my portfolio, and I was doing quite well in terms of like my portfolio growth was really good, and my equity growth in my portfolio was really good.
Were you still working in a job?
Yes, I was still working in a job until 2014, so for about 4 years. And that's when I realized, a lot of people started coming up to me and said, we want to do the same thing as you. Can you help us? So it was like a natural transition for me to go leave the job of Nestle and get my real estate license. Also, it gave me more tools to sort of like go and use those tools to become a better investor, right? I didn't want to depend on realtors anymore. It was very frustrating dealing with a lot of realtors, and I was doing most of the work anyway. And I wanted to continue doing work in sales. So as an investor and as a salesperson, it made more sense for me to get my realtor license. And so I got my realtor license in 2014.
All right. And fast forward to today, like talk me through if you were to give me like a two-liner on, what you own as a portfolio and what you do for other people.
Yeah. So started in 2010, fast forward 13 years, I own a $25 million portfolio with 17 houses, properties in Toronto that comprises of single family homes and a lot of commercial property, mixed use commercial property. I don't indulge that much in condos. I like the idea of buying freehold property more. So the portfolio is 25 million with 17 houses with 34 doors, and I manage about 42 tenants. So I've got a pretty good sizable portfolio. And the most important thing that I'm very proud of is that, over leveraging is a very bad disease in our economy. Right? A lot of people over leverage. My loan to value in my entire portfolio is 50%.
Oh, wow.
Which is very low compared to like what a lot of people have. But I'm a very conservative investor, even though, I consider myself more a conservative investor, but at the same time, picking properties that are undervalued, buying and adding value at each stage of its acquisition, renovation, renting, and then disposition. Value has to be added on each of those steps, right? And just based on that, simply like I've grown my portfolio quite rapidly, and obviously the market really helped, right? So in the last 10 years, real estate market has really taken off in Toronto, and I think I was the right person at the right time, buying the right kind of property.
Makes sense. So for anyone who's listening to this and trying to figure out what loan to value is, it's basically if you have the 25 million portfolio, $25 million, right? 12.5 million of that is actually equity. And the rest is loan. So that's loan to value 50%, right? So like if you were to start all over the team, like to anyone who is a new investor, never bought a home in today's market, which is kind of, we don't know where it's going, the interest rate, right? And everything. So for your, you don't have that equity, you probably have $100,000. What would you do right now?
Yeah, so very different world in 2010 versus now. At the same time, the fundamentals of what I have bought in 2010 to 2014 versus now haven't changed much. Okay, right? So my first advice to somebody would be like, obviously make sure that you have some amount of equity saved, some amount of savings that you have that, and then find like-minded individuals that have similar goals. If you don't have enough down payment to go and purchase something in Toronto or all these amazing areas around Toronto, then partner up with somebody and do joint ventureship. I have not grown my portfolio single-handedly myself. I have joint ventured with a lot of people. I also feel like if you have a good idea, if you have a good property that you single down, if you've done the due diligence, if you've done the research, take that idea, put it into a business model, and go pitch it to people who will joint venture with you or partner with you. I think like I don't have enough money and the down payment is not there is not a good enough excuse to not go and invest in real estate. There's always a way if there's a good idea on the table, right? So as much as we say that the world is different, sure, the amount of appreciation and equity appreciation, especially with so much government regulations and intervention, and the fact that property prices have really increased, is not going to, you can't expect to get the same returns. But fundamentally, you still have properties in the 700 to 900 range, not just in Toronto, but little bit areas outside of Toronto. If you do the due diligence, meet the right people, narrow down the right properties, put it into a business model, and then seek capital from other people to, be passive investors, there's always a way to invest in real estate. And again, my model hasn't changed. I'm not going and paying $1.5 million for a property even though 7-8 years ago I was paying 700 to 900, my purchase price and acquisition has still remained the same.
Okay.
I just switched areas, right? With the similar fundamentals, which is I like to buy small houses on big pieces of lot that are very run down and very like almost like tear down levels. And I turn them into 2 units, I rent them out, and then I hold, and then I eventually go out. And that fundamentally has not changed. I think there's still a lot of opportunity in Toronto, especially with the amount of housing supply that remains to be very low and the amount of demand that remains very high. So there are opportunities. You just have to find them, and you have to find the right people who can help you find them.
And how about people who get scared, to renovate, right? So they're like, oh, the basement is finished. I don't know if as a first investment property, I want to get into something where I need to, deal with contractors. So what would you say to that?
Great question and very challenging.
Yeah.
Right? Like when I started my career, I used to do a lot of renovations. It's not like I didn't learn. I had a very, very sharp, steep learning curve, right? I used to go for the cheapest renovation guy. I used to try to cut cost. Over the years, I have realized that, paying the right people, paying the people who have the backing of right referrals, don't chintz out on the amount of renovation and type of people that you hire. Cheapest guy is always not the best guy. Most likely, it's never the best guy. So always hire the right team, right people. Ask around. There's a lot of referrals that you can get from people who've done work with renovation guys. And if you do the right diligence and not look at just how much it's going to cost me and getting the right people should be your focus, then renovations are not that hard. Get the right team. They will execute the work in a really good time period and get it done, right? So I have a lot of investors that are a little skeptical in the beginning, but we offer them good renovation teams to say, this is the guy that you should use, and they will bang it out in 2-3 months and get the work done. But to be honest, now, real estate is not a black and white kind of business. There is gray areas in real estate, and there is learning curves in real estate. If you are looking for a complete risk-free investment, real estate is not for you. You have to get your hands dirty in real estate. You have to learn through mistakes. As long as you're not making the same mistakes twice and you're growing, you'll be okay.
Besides, a lot of people say that, if I invest into, real estate keeps going up. We hear this with a lot of realtors, a lot of, people on social media. Real estate always goes up, right? If that's the case, then how is it risky? Is there an instance in your, journey where you thought that, okay, it does go up, but there are challenges that come?
So I don't believe in that. I don't think real estate always grows up. I think this is a notion that has been created by a lot of salespeople who are looking to make a quick buck in real estate.
Okay.
Real estate is not something that goes up. Yes, there's evidence that in a very, very long term, you will see, but that's also caused by inflation. Right. They say it's the time in the market, not timing in the market. But I do believe in timing in the market. And how you determine good timing in the market is by working with people who have a lot of experience in investing. Not just realtors who are looking to sell real estate, but maybe realtors who come from an investment background or investors who come from an investment background who have seen the cycles. What timing in the real estate is going to help you with is expedite your real estate growth really fast, which is when to press the brakes and not buy, and when the market is low and when is the right time to step in. For example, in 2010, the markets were low and their sentiment was not very high. But all the solid fundamentals of Toronto was looking in the right direction, which is why I purchased a lot from 2010 to 2014. Right? 2017-ish, when interest rates started going up for the first time, I pressed the brakes. So again, an perfect example is COVID. In 2020, everybody got scared. Everybody was stepping back. Right? I bought 4 properties in 2020 in the midst of COVID because I decided to take that calculated risk that, pandemic is not going to kill everybody, and it's not an international problem. So where people don't know, they still need a place to live. In fact, working from home is getting a very big trend. So I better start buying properties that have the extra basement or extra office space where working from home will get really better. So timing in the market is very important, and not just focus on, hey, I'm going to buy this and it's going to go up, because you also have to be careful that today the prices are very high and there are premiums attached to places like downtown Toronto. I think pre-construction is also a really screwed up market. I'm charging way too much per square foot just based on marketing and just based on sales tactics.
Very speculative now.
Extremely speculative. And how do you know appraisal values are going to stay intact in 4 years from today? All you're doing is putting the problem on the shelf.
Yeah.
So if you're buying properties which are fundamentally correct, and if you don't have experience and you don't know how to find them, It's not that difficult to go on social media and find the right people who are doing this over and over again. Interview 2 to 3 people and see which person resonates with you, which person has experience, which person comes from an investor background, and then choose to work with that person who will show you properties that are fundamentally correct and that are market proof. That's how you mitigate a risk which does exist. And do pay attention to timing in the market, because a lot of people in the heated market of 2021 overpaid for properties. It was I pressed the brakes on almost all my investors and did not buy a single property in 2021 because government was spending a lot of money and we knew that inflation was looming and interest rates are inevitably going to have to increase. A person who comes from an economics background, investor background, will tell you that and press the brakes on you in 2021. Hence, mitigate your risk.
And what would you say to people in today's market when the interest rates are so high, the inventory is so low? Like, should a person hold on to cash right now and wait for the market to go down further? Like, I get this question a lot.
So I think consistently keeping an eye for good deals is very important. I think you have to consistently, watch the market. First of all, create a strategy for yourself. I have 100K. First, go and get your approval from a mortgage provider. Make sure that you know your budget. If your budget is there, and then you have to start searching within your budget's parameters what you can buy. If that is not enough and you still want to buy something and your budget is not enough, partner up with somebody and bring him in. Then keep your strategy that my strategy is to buy fundamentally correct properties, which is freehold properties that can be potentially turned into multiple rental streams. I don't think buying something in Toronto, which is going to be a single family home, is ever going to give you that cash flow. So try to focus on properties that, and there's a lot of encouragement coming through zoning laws that are allowing properties to now become triplexes, fourplexes. Yeah. I think that's where the opportunity lies for somebody who wants to stick with good locations. Buy something that can be converted into a duplex, converted into a triplex. So your cash flows can be managed by the temporary interest rate increases. If you buy properties that are single family homes that can be converted into duplexes or triplexes, yes, temporarily you'll be paying high interest rates, but rent at three income streams or 2 income streams will balance that cash flow. And eventually when interest rates come down, you'll be in a very good position of high cash flow, right? So that will be my immediate advice to somebody. Look for good locations, figure out your strategy and budget. If your budget doesn't meet the criteria of the investment you want to buy, partner with somebody who has similar goals, and then go and buy properties that has an upside, which is buy a single family that can be converted into 2 or 3 rentals to make sure that your cash flow is covered.
So there's another sentiment that, a lot of people buy for appreciation, speculative, right? Yes. So I'll buy the pre-construction and it will appreciate in 4 years. We just assume that. And unfortunately, or fortunately, it's been happening, right? So it's not that it's unfounded. So what's your view on investing for cash flow versus investing for appreciation?
So also depends on the stage of growth and your long-term plans. If people are looking to, like I'm a purchaser, I'm an investor who's purchasing for equity appreciation. And my focus is not to put $200, $300, $400, $500 in my pocket every month. My focus is that how will my portfolio grow over time? And as your loan to value will start decreasing, your passive income will start booming, right? It took me 10 years to create a portfolio that gives me positive cash flow, and because I've accumulated a lot of equity in it, and I've kept my loan to value low. So my answer is that I think it's better to invest for properties that are undervalued, and it's important to grow equity in your portfolio. But at the same time, keep an eye on cash flows of at least a break-even model. At the same time, I think it's really important that you don't get carried away with properties that are just there for speculative. I think sweat equity is very important in a property.
I agree.
A property that you're buying that is on a very low scale of highest to best use. What that means is if you buy a property, the first question I ask is, what is the upside? Can this property be built? Is this a small house on a big lot can then eventually be built into a bigger home? Can this single family home be converted into a duplex? If you buy a property that has a lot of upside and is far from its highest and best use, equity appreciation is inevitable. But to buy properties such as pre-construction and just leave it in the hands of the market is where speculation comes in, right? And I think our pre-construction industry is extremely unregulated. It's extremely, it's extremely infested with real estate agents who are, there's huge incentives on the table for them to sell pre-construction. And it also is, it's wrong because a lot of people who are buying pre-construction are misguided to think that I don't have to get a mortgage, so let's go buy pre-construction and put the problem on the shelf for 4 years, right? Because that after 4 years, you're going to get that problem right, and it can be very dangerous. Are you checking your development charges are capped or not? Are you checking levies? Are you making sure your contracts are not one-sided? Are you allowed to do assignments? Is there a clear exit strategy for a property? And none of that exists in pre-construction, not to mention the contracts are extremely unregulated and one-sided. So my advice to any first-time home buyer is don't buy pre-construction today. Look for properties that are undervalued. If you have to step out of Toronto to find affordable areas, there are excellent areas such as Windsor, Peterborough, Kingston, Wolf, places where purchase prices are not very high, especially in today's market. And if your budget doesn't allow, partner up with like-minded people. Like you can meet through networking events, meet through social media, and actively seek out. Real estate is not just to sit back and get appreciation and just not, it's a very, very hands-on, and you need to put a lot of due diligence and need to be really, really informative about what you're investing in. And you have to have the ability to take certain amount of risks. Only thing you can do is mitigate your risk through buying fundamentally correct properties.
And price should never be the only criteria. You talk about location, you invest mostly in Toronto. So what other things that you look at? For instance, for me, it's very important that there's a cross-border Walmart close to my door.
Yeah.
And the reason is that they've already spent so much money on understanding whether this area will go or not. And I'm like, if there's a Costco or, they've done their due diligence and, this is a good area.
Great point. Yes.
Like, are there any other criteria that you're looking at apart from the
So Costco, Walmart, Starbucks are very good ones. Yeah, because these guys have a big research department and they're not just dumping a lot of money into research to make sure there is growth and gentrification in that area. They have enough research to support that there's enough demand of housing around or coming or they're existing. That's another one is big builders such as Tridel, Menkes, Minto, all these big builders. Where are they buying land? If they're buying land, that means that there's multiple units coming and housing is about to go bigger in that area. That's the second one. Third one I really like is the water. So all my investments, almost the entire $25 million, with the exception of some properties that I own in North York, are all very close to Lake Ontario. I love the water because I feel like if you go to any big city in the world, including Singapore, including, New York, luxury always is attracted towards water, right? So I think Toronto's waterfront and areas around the water are still very overvalued. And I love to buy properties within 5 minutes distance of the lake because that really helps prices and the land to appreciate them, right? So you've got Costco, Walmart, you've got big box stores, and you've got big builders, and you've got the water. And the second thing would be, what I also look for is a metric, which is if I'm buying in a street, I would like to see majority of the homes be old, but then also a trend that shows there's new houses popping up in that area, which kind of gives you an inclination of where development is coming.
Plus, I think a good compare to what you can actually do with the property in the north.
Exactly. The upside, highest and best use, right? So that's covered in my previous point, which is buy a property that has an upside. Right. Can I do something to this property that will increase its value? If it's a no, that means you're just at the limit of the market. If it's a yes, that means sweat equity can appreciate the value.
I also, when I talk to new investors, I just feel that they are doing it out of FOMO. I don't think that they have understood what it means to be a landlord. So there are two parts to my question. So one is that should everyone become a landlord? Maybe it's not for everyone, right? So what's your point of view on that? And the other one is there an instance in your investing journey which was really hard for you? A bad tenant, a bad property, something that happened,
Yeah, so happy to answer that question. And yes, there has been a lot of bad stories, but as a landlord, I think landlording is not for everybody, especially in a city where there is no protection for landlords. It's a very one-sided system between tenants and landlord. So you have to have an extremely thick skin. You have to have the ability to take certain risks that if my rent is not paid for the next 3 to 4 months for just the purposes of the tenant deciding not to pay you, and there's very little protection, you have to have the ability to manage that. If you are a person who has a very taxing job and you're working 9 to 6 and you don't want any headaches in your life, then landlording is not for you. I think people have this FOMO of missing out on real estate because last 10 years has proven that real estate has made a lot of people rich. But real estate can also wipe out your entire wealth very quickly, right? Because you're so leveraged.
Yeah.
Right? Your 20% of equity that you take against 80%, if that valuation is not correct and that loan to value starts increasing and in some cases even becomes more than your value, it can wipe you out. Not to mention if a tenant stops paying, there's very little repercussions that you can take. So I think you have to be very careful in working with the right people who can help you through the process of tenant selection. Buy in locations that, do your demographic check properly to make sure that the area is not flooded with bad tenants or bad demographics of people. That's one of the major things that I do when I do diligence for a property. I like sticking to Toronto because I feel like there's more working class, more families, more people who are, commuting to downtown and having good jobs. So my locations, when I pick, I really get into the demographics of who I'm going to be renting this to. And just because of this FOMO, which I think you're absolutely correct about, I think a lot of people rush into buying their first or second property, but then they get discouraged and then they get fed up and that's the end of their real estate career. So if you want to do this, you have to be patient. Yeah, and again, I keep saying this, work with the people who have experience as an investor who can guide you through these challenges. And if you have a full-time job and you want absolutely no headache, don't buy real estate because this business comes with the risk of a headache. It's a hands-on business.
I agree. And, when we bought in Calgary, this was the first experience of mine so far. And we were like, what's the worst that would happen, right? So, and then we had, a tenant who was cooking too much and the upstairs people were complaining about him and then he left and, we increased our rents or whatever, right? And then the upstairs tenants are complaining about, because it's a new house. So, there's not much landscaping yet, we are not having enough fun.
They're spoiled. The tenants are spoiled. There's not much laws. They know how to take advantage of the system.
Yeah.
As a landlord, you have to really know what you're doing. It's like running a business.
Yeah, makes sense. A lot of people actually, again, I'm a mortgage agent, right? So a lot of people come to me and say that, I have a lot of equity in my family home. A lot of me, it's $300,000. Right? So $1 million property. And can I pull $100,000, $150,000 on HELOC and then invest in real estate? So you leverage on your family and then you invest into real estate. So what would you say is the right time, or is it at all the right thing to do? Like putting equity on the...
No, I mean, I've always been very conservative. That instead of pulling more debt, I have always been comfortable with bringing in joint venture partners. And I invite equity rather than debt. I don't like the idea of over leveraging. I think over leveraging is a big disease in our economy today. And a lot of it is coming from the social pressures on social media of people wanting to become successful very quickly. You have to know that real estate is a long-term game. It takes 5 to 10 years, some cases even longer, to really see those excellent results to come in. If you're trying to make it overnight, in real estate, it's not going to happen. And those are the people that are trying to do it too quickly and they're going in over leveraging, which is again a disease caused through a lot of pressures of social requirements for people to do better very quickly. Even the new generation, I feel like they just don't have any patience. They want to go and make money tomorrow. And therefore, the only capital available to them is maybe through over leveraging and taking line of equity. So no, my advice is don't over leverage. I think my hard stop on properties is 80%, right? And the right fundamentals is you can Google, you can learn about this, keep your loan to values at 65% to be extra conservative.
Yeah, I think.
Right? So the minute you are hitting above the 80% loan to value, then that's your cue that you're doing something wrong and you're now starting to get into danger zones because market changes can happen very quickly. And don't get into real estate thinking that it's an overnight rich process. Maybe in certain years it was an exception because Toronto was very undervalued to begin with and Canada was very open to immigrants and open to a lot of people rushing into the country. But now it's started to, with foreign investments being banned and everything else, you cannot expect the same results and don't use the same results as a handbook to go and make future mistakes.
Like, do you have any other, why did you only choose Toronto? You continued to do still in Toronto?
Because, when I started working in Toronto, the major reason is also I believe in efficiency, right? And economies of scale. I like to be 5 minutes from where I live, and I like to own everything 15 to 20 minutes from where I operate.
Okay.
Because that gives me the ability to focus on an area, understand the area really well, have trades in a certain area, have a property manager in that area, have an office in that area, and be able to manage the scaling. If you're going to disperse yourself too thick, you're not going to understand areas as well as people who are local. So I consider myself being in Toronto. I still see a lot of value in Toronto. And I personally, at this stage of my life, have the luxury of equity and capital. So I don't necessarily need to step out of Toronto. Of course, there's good models outside of Toronto, and especially if you're looking to gain better cash flow, you can go outside of Toronto because there is better cash flow. But for me, I'm more comfortable, more settled, and I like to focus on a niche. I'm a person who understands that if you're working in one area, you have to be the master of that one area. So now I've started getting into development, I'm getting into rezoning, I'm getting into building luxury homes, all in that one area that I invest in. That's my personal reason why I haven't stepped on it.
And what keeps you going? Like, you started with one property, then you said, okay, let me just do it for other people. You continue to build your portfolio, you continue to get clients, I'm getting into, like building houses and custom homes. Like, why?
I think the big why is that I think I really enjoy what I do.
Okay.
Right? And yes, there's, I feel like I've also gotten past a lot of adversity. As a new immigrant, when I started in the business of real estate, I didn't have that many friends and family to begin with. So as a salesperson, I used to go door knocking. I used to, send out flyers. I used to work. So I've seen a lot of adversity. I feel like I have overcome a lot of the things that have given me a handbook of mistakes to not make again, right? And now that I'm in a position where I can keep my growth at a slow, sustainable level, I don't need to stop. And as you are at a certain point, your long-term growth can happen through very good planned short-term goals. It gives me the ability to hire the team, hire the right people, and grow sustainably. Because at this stage, it's not just also about grow. It's also about protect what you have. So I really enjoy the game, in short, right? I really enjoy the business of real estate. It gives me the opportunity to still meet excellent people. It gives me the ability to do exactly what I'm doing and plan my own schedule and really, really enjoy entrepreneurship as a whole. But there are good days and bad days, right? So
Most of us said that, there have been instances in our life where we said, wow, whatever we were working for the last 2 years and we thought it was going to give us, a lot of fruits, it's not happening. And it's just that realization that, so what was your, bottom or the worst?
I think a lot of it was 2021, not because of just the fact that, 2021 was one of my best years in sales.
Okay.
But I hit a wall because I didn't have that much infrastructure to do so much business. So I was overworking myself. Right? It's like you're running on a heated engine.
Yeah.
I was working 15, 16 hours a day. I didn't want to let my clients down. I took too much in terms of like development projects and I didn't have any help. So that was really like a point where I just sort of like hit a wall and I really like was overstressed and I could see that I was losing my health and I was losing my physical aspects of life, personal aspects of life. That was, even though it was one of the best sales year, I was not happy that year. So I had to take a huge step back and sort of like decide that in 2022, I was going to take the whole year to sort of like make an infrastructure that can sustain growth. And that I think a lot of entrepreneurs hit. They think they can do everything themselves. You have to be able to share your earnings and hire the right people and share the money with them to help you grow. So I think 2021, from a lot of perspectives, was a very reflective year for me and made me realize that I can't sustain this. You might have 1 or 2 years where you can do this, but after a while, you'd hit a wall.
Yeah.
So be prepared for good growth happening and have the right infrastructure to support that.
What would you say to someone who, let's say, landed last month into this business, landed in Canada, and they're, let's say, they're mid-30s and they're already thinking in their head that, they're late in buying a house, but everyone has to buy a house, right? So, like, what would you say to them, like, what should they do?
Again, same answer. Take the time to find the right person, because it will make your journey of looking for a home very efficient. There's a lot of first-time home buyers.
It's not about home, right? So they're just fine. They're still trying to figure out, job market is low. And they have this, constant, saying because of social media that they have to buy a house, but they're not ready right now. They don't have a job. They don't have, and they're feeling that they're already late, right? So
well, again, these are extremely wrong reasons to first of all want to buy a house. Yeah, I think you should be buying a house coming from pressures of social media. Number two, I think you should go back to conservative thinking of networking and meeting the right people. There is no magic answer. I think you should wait till you're not ready to buy real estate because your one wrong purchase can set you back pretty much to be able to ever buy something else or ever upsize. When you move into Canada, you buy a 1-bedroom, move to a 2-bedroom, buy a house, bigger house, and maybe eventually downsize. There's usually 4 to 5 transactions of real estate. Right. But if your first one is wrong, you'll never be able to upgrade. You'll be spending the rest of your life paying for something that the value never comes up, right? And transactional cost is very high in Canada. So I would say take a step back, make your own goals, have a strategy, prepare a budget, work with the right people, and be patient to purchase your first real estate.
Amazing. So last segment of this, podcast, I always I call it the mindset matrix because I'm trying to understand, what's happening in your head.
Yeah.
So what's the best advice that you ever got and from me?
I want to say the best advice I ever got was probably from my dad, right? Who always said that whether you're having good times or bad times, make your periods very straight. Don't go crazy in good times and don't panic in the bad times. Always keep yourself prepared for the worst in the good times and always be optimistic in the bad times. So don't start overspending, don't start doing all those things. And at the same time, when times are bad, your appearance should always be very confident and don't ever let that be known, right? So that always kept me very grounded, right? Which is that I'm always very, very consistent in how I dress, how I talk, what I do on my daily basis, whether I'm having an excellent day and I'm making like $1 million sale or I'm having an extremely bad day. Nobody can tell. And that's what keeps me in that very grounded, consistent phase of like just my appearances are always very consistent. So,
what were you doing? And this is a two-pronged question. So what were you doing 10 years ago? Like, let's say, this day in 2030.
door knocking.
Yeah.
I was knocking doors for 3 to 4 hours a day. I just got my real estate license and I was just asking people if they want to sell their houses. I was learning the streets. I think I was more obsessed with learning about real estate, not about like how to become a good marketer in real estate. Today, you see people get their licenses. The next day, they're on social media and they're calling themselves the expert. They haven't bought a house themselves. They have nothing to back it up. They have no credibility. They haven't done anything, but somehow they're experts because they did a 5-piece 4-year course. So what I was doing 10 years ago, I was investing in myself to really learn. Because if I really learned and had the knowledge, then I can provide that value to someone else and hence convert it into a sale from me and use it to my advantage to become a better investor.
And what would you say to that side? If you were to know whatever happened.
Keep going, because I think 10 years later, you'll be very pleased, right? And do it with the right intentions. I think anything you do, if you're doing it with the right intention, I don't think you can go wrong.
Yeah.
And right intentions means having the right empathy for clients, doing the right intentions when you hire someone, when they finish their job, you have to pay them. Having the right intentions of when someone has hired you, make sure you are completing the job for them in a very good way, because that will turn into referrals. And then take shortcuts. Shortcuts is what pretty much kills everybody's journey. So be in it for the long term, or pick something that interests you that you can see yourself in the long term.
Makes sense. If you were to meet, and this is something that baffles a lot of people, but if you were, there was a movie called Nayak in India, right? So where he was made the Prime Minister for one day, right? So if you were to become President of the world for one day.
President of the world,
Yeah.
or Canada.
Of the world for one day, right? So, and you were to pass a law, a bill, whatever you call it, and everyone has to follow that. What would that be?
Every single person has to have a job. Has to have a purpose. And so that every single person has a level of independence, has a level of respect, and has a level to give back, and have a level where anything that they're making and they're earning, that they actually deserve. Because too many people are expecting handouts there are too many entitled people, especially in the new generation. And there's people who just don't want to work and they just got everything handed to them. So I would make sure that every person has a purpose or a job, whether it's planting grass, or whether it's planting trees, or whether it's cleaning somebody's windows, or whether it's being a CEO. But no person should have, to go through life just expecting handouts. And I think that, again, comes from a very, if you don't have a purpose in life, you're ultimately going to become a negative person and you're going to cause harm. And the world will be a better place if everybody was working towards a purpose.
How do you find that?
Find what?
How did you find your purpose?
Interest, not just doing something that is financially driven, also doing something that you can do 8 to 10 hours a day and not make money and still be happy. And I've seen those times. Beginning of my career, not everybody was earning 3, 4, 5 months. I didn't have a single paycheck, but I was loving what I was doing and I knew that was purpose. So.
Yeah. If you were to take out anyone for lunch or dinner, anyone, you had one which, who would that person be? Should be dead or alive, right? So who will that person be and why?
Probably my mom. I've lost her a couple of years ago and I wish I'd spend more money with her, spend more time with her. And I think I was too engulfed in my career. This was again in that 2021 phase. And you don't spend enough time with your family, right? Because you're too much focused on your work and forget the things that are very important. So I can't think of a more fair person since you said never alive than I want to. And I care to take out. I'm not really awed by any celebrity or any kind of person who's, maybe Tony Robbins. He seems like a super interesting salesperson. The world and gurus are all people who have done sales. So alive, Tony Robbins, dead, my mom.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you so much, Sahil.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I'm pretty sure, a lot of people get a lot of insight into, what they should do, if they're coming in you. So, yeah, thank you so much for that.
My pleasure.